Hello everybody, here is a video on how to make a clay box, and I'm just going to hold this up to the camera, and if you are at home and need this, I'm just going to have you pause the video and try to create your template. If you are one of my students, then you can find this on the Google Classroom. This can be altered to your own measurements, but this is what I have, and it creates a really great size box for the cacti in the other videos that we created. So pause it now, try to create this if you need to, and I'm gonna get started on what you do once you have your template. So here are some paint stirring sticks that I got at the local hardware store, and I actually taped 2 together, so you need 4, and I taped them together. So this is going to help you to make sure that you don't roll your clay too thin. So you're going to keep these on either side of your clay, and then you need a rolling pin. The rolling pin is going to press your clay down, and I might block the camera a little for this part. You got to stand up and over your clay and really press down. And then I always turn my fabric because this part hasn't been rolled yet. Make sure that these sticks are as wide as your rolling pin. I call them train tracks, and this is the train. So you don't want to have your train tracks wider than the train. And that just helps to make sure that you don't over roll your clay. So I cut a pretty big piece of clay that I didn't need, but here we go anyway. I'm going to just keep rolling. And I think that's as far as I'm going to go. Okay. After that, you're going to take your template and you're going to actually follow the steps that are written up there, which is first you're going to cut it with a scissor. So you need a scissor, and you're going to cut around the outside of this shape. Templates when you work with clay are great because you can work out any of your problems or your dimensions on paper first, and once you have what you need, then you can create the paper template, and it's going to help you have much more success with your clay. So I've done this for my students. All right. Once you've cut that out, you're going to place this template onto your clay, and then you can use any of the following tools. Now, I have a plastic knife, I have a wooden stylus, or I have this wooden tool that's sort of shaped like a knife. You're going to make sure that this doesn't move, and then you're going to cut in and around this shape. And now I'm pressing down hard, and I'm actually going to go past this line and just make my lines go off the edge, like that. Get that out of my way. See how I just keep cutting past? It ends up making life a lot easier, and it also makes your edges and your corners a little cleaner. Remove that. Okay, so you're going to cut around the outside first. Once you've done this, then you'll be ready to start cutting into your clay. I think I pressed quite hard enough there. I always recommend with the scraps that you kind of keep them together and maybe even, like, you know, put them into a ball. This way they don't dry out. You're not going to need that for today. Now you're not going to pick your template up just yet. You're going to use this tool or a smaller tool, whatever you prefer, to sort of perforate on these dotted lines. And it's just regular printer paper, so it's really thin. So this happens pretty easily. Now you can take this off. You don't need that anymore. That can go in the garbage. And now you have a sense of where you need to cut. When you cut, press down pretty hard so that you cut all the way through. And you want to be working on a piece of fabric because often clay gets stuck to a table and then your whole shape is destroyed. So I always suggest working on fabric when you're using clay. Now we are ready to lift the walls of this box. So it's going to end up looking like that. Before you do that, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to score or scratch towards the bottom of each of these pieces. So this is going to end up being the bottom because you're going to tilt it up like that. The only thing you're not going to score is that center piece because that's the bottom of the box. Okay? Now, this is called slip. Slip is basically this kind of clay. I left it dried out and then I rolled over it with a rolling pin, put it in there. It was like a dry powder, and then I added some water to it, and it makes this slimy texture here. But this acts like glue, and this is really important when you're trying to attach two pieces of clay. So first you score, and then you add slip to where you scored. And now you are ready to stand those up, and I'm putting a little bit of pressure, and I'm just pressing that in. Yeah, maybe I didn't cut that all the way, okay. And you'll see what happens with the corners in just a second. Okay, so now all of your corners are going to look like this. So what you're going to do is you're going to take some of this extra clay and you're going to, score that a little bit. Roll your extra clay into like a thick coil or a snake. And add a little bit of slip. And then you're going to stick that in there. And I can just cut that excess piece off. Now before you move on, you should probably blend these. And that just means you're going to rub. And the slip should make it a little softer so that you can do this. But if you feel like it's a hard thing, or it's a little difficult, all you need to do is get a little cup with some water, one finger, and just sort of smooth around. You're basically trying to make it seem like there was no joining of two different pieces. You want to not be able to see that you joined pieces together. Okay? So that's a pretty good joint right there. And now I'm going to move on to the next one. So for the sake of the camera, I guess I should turn it a little so that we can see this one. So same thing. You just got to keep on going in all the corners like that. So you scratch, take a little piece of your clay, roll a coil. You don't want it to be too skinny. You want it to fill in that space. Get your slip on there. Tuck this in. This I don't have any extra, so I don't need to cut anything. And then just rub. Now you want to be careful about adding too much water, and you also want to be careful about too much pressure. You don't want to press too hard. Water makes your clay softer. So if you're noticing a lot of cracking in your clay, that means your clay is a little dry, and water wouldn't hurt it. It would actually probably help. But this clay is definitely not dry. So I do not need to add much water, and if I do, it's got to be a very small amount. Otherwise it's going to turn into this. Every time you move it, just move it very carefully, and so on and so forth. So one more time, and then I'm going to just stop the video so that you can get to work. Score, slip, coil. Smooth. Okay? So this is how you can create a box. There's lots of other ways to make boxes out of clay, but this is one. And this is what I am teaching my students in my art room. So I thought I'd make a video so that you can join in on the fun. Now, the plan in my classroom is that we are going to, we're gonna end up filling this with sand, and then we're gonna put our little cacti in there after we glaze this and stuff. So after you do all 4 of these corners, if there's time, and if you're at home, you definitely have time, you can take your finger and go inside here and just try to smooth some of those edges with a little bit of water. Another thing you could do is flip it over. It couldn't hurt to flip it over and smooth where those seams join together. And you know, that's just good practice. It's just good to do because then it helps to keep your clay nice and strong. So I need a little more water there. So you get the idea. Have fun with this, but make sure you are using slip and scoring each time you attach clay together, because if you don't, you will be sorry. Right now when the clay is moist, it might stick together, but if you don't do those two things, score and slip, it will end up coming apart when it's drying. So this is ceramic clay, but if you're at home doing this, you can definitely use air dry clay and use the same process. All right, have a great time.